Almost there. Chapter 1. Tiana. Lafayette Cemetery, New Orleans, 1926. Mardi Gras. The jubilant sounds of Mardi Gras resonated throughout New Orleans as vibrant, colorful floats wound their way along the wide avenues of the city. Flambeau carriers hoisted their torches high, lighting up the deep purple sky and making way for the costumed revelers who danced in the street. But within the dark, secluded recesses of Lafayette Cemetery, it was eerily quiet. Tiana's tiny green body trembled as she raced down a narrow alleyway, the cemetery's crumbly stone catacombs lined up like sentries on either side of her. Her heart pounded against her chest, the thump, 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 ringing more loudly in her ears with each inch of the pavement she traversed. She had no idea where she was going, she just knew she had to get away from the shadows that were hot on her heels. Tiana clutched the amulet her friend Ray shoved into her hands moments before, treating it with the same care as her daddy's Distinguished Service Cross from the Army. Oh, if only her daddy could see her right now. What would he think? How would she explain this mess she'd gotten herself into, wishing on an evening star for her restaurant and getting mixed up in some nefarious dealings, falling for a prince, becoming friends with a gator and a firefly along the way, and now running through the cemetery like the fires of hell were at her feet, fleeing from something she barely understood herself. Her conscience pleaded with her to go back and make sure her firefly friend was okay, but her instincts told her she couldn't. Not yet. She had to hide, and she had to keep this amulet out of the Shadow Man's clutches until she figured out what was going on. Tiana sprinted around a corner and galloped toward a menacing stone facade. Just as she reached it, an otherworldly shadow appeared out of nowhere. Terror robbed her of her ability to think, to breathe. All she could do was quake in fear as the terrifying blob loomed overhead, its spindly fingers reaching for her. This was it. She was caught. But she never gave up anything without a fight. Holding the amulet as far away as her tiny arms could stretch, she glared at the shadow and issued a warning. "Back off, or I'm going to break this thing in a million pieces." "Don't!" Tiana went still. She recognized that voice. Facilier. The voodoo practitioner was known for prowling about the French Quarter, reading palms and hustling poor unwitting souls and his card tricks. Everyone in New Orleans called him the Shadow Man due to his dabbling in dark magic, and other shady dealings, no doubt. "Where are you, Shadow Man?" "You have something that belongs to me," Facilier said, as he emerged from the darkness, "and I want it back." "No." Tiana clutched the amulet against her chest. "Ray said to keep this away from you no matter what. He wouldn't have told me to do so without good reason." She straightened her shoulders and silently prayed her voice wouldn't quiver when she spoke. "I'm not giving you a thing." His lips curled into an evil snarl, but then his expression changed, an air of nonchalance replacing his impatience. He buffed his nails on his lapel and observed her with a blithe disregard. "I am a businessman, after all. I understand how this game is played." His brow arched in inquiry. "What do you say to a trade?" "I'm not interested in anything you have to offer. I won't—" A blast of wind caught Tiana's unawares, unfollowed by a cloud of glittery purple dust that swirled around her. An odd sensation shot through her like a bolt of lightning, nearly bringing her to her wobbly knees. She blinked. Hard. What's happening?" She stretched out her arms, her human arms, and wiggled her fingers. She was human again. Tiana peered down in stunned silence at the sparkling white silk draping her body. The rhinestone and pearl-studded gown she wore now was unlike anything she'd ever owned. When she lifted her head, she gasped at her surroundings. Tiana twirled around in a slow circle, mesmerized by the glitz and glamour of a place she had only seen in her nightly dreams. The old sugar mill she had her heart set on buying for years was no longer decrepit and falling apart. The floors gleamed underneath her feet, shining so bright they nearly blinded her. Brilliant crystal chandeliers hung high above her head, illuminating a massive dining room that was crowded with patrons. Men in suit jackets and women wearing their Sunday best sat in cloth-covered tables adorned with extravagant centerpieces and sparkling china. Everyone seemed to be having a grand time, enjoying rich, fragrant dishes that smelled like the food Tiana used to cook with her daddy. "Where am I?" she whispered. "You know where you are. You've been dreaming about owning this restaurant for years, and it can be all yours, Tiana." But how?" "Why don't you hand me that talisman?" Facilier said, "and I'll fill you in all the details." Tiana stared at her hand in perplexed awe as it extended the pendant toward Facilier as of its own accord, as she had no control over it. With a jolt, she snapped herself out of the daze and yanked the pendant away. "No," she said. She shook her head, ridding herself of the vestiges of whatever trance Facilier had put her in. She had to remember to keep her guard up around this one. His fevered gaze remained on the amulet, amplifying the alarm bells ringing in Tiana's head. She had no idea what this pendant held, but the Shadow Man wanted it something fierce, which meant he could never have it. "I'm not giving you anything," she reiterated. "Not even in exchange for your restaurant?" I can still get my restaurant. I just have to keep working for it." "But why continue to toil with my friends on the other side can get your restaurant just like that." He snapped his fingers. "All I have to do is ask them on your behalf. Come on, Tiana. You're almost there. Let's make this deal, and I'll get you across the finish line." "No," she said more forcefully. He still towered over her, even though she was now human, but Tiana refused to be intimidated. "I don't need to rely on help from the likes of you, Shadow Man, but I don't want anybody to give me my restaurant. I want to earn it, just like my daddy taught me." At the mention of her daddy, Facilier's eyes light up. He opened his palm and blew another cloud of iridescent dust in her face. Tiana's head jerked back, and she was once again plunged into a dream world. It took her a moment to find her bearings as she tried to navigate the foggy edges of her mind. She just stood inside the doorway of a state-of-the-art kitchen, like the one she'd seen in magazines. Her mouth watered at the delicious aroma wafting in from the large copper pots that occupied the gas stove. Waiters in sharp tuxedos fitted through the place, grabbing plates filled with artfully arranged food and carrying them out the door. She took a tentative step forward. With that one step, her body began to move about the kitchen, not walking, but gliding, as if on a cloud. Through the sea of cooks and waitstaff, Tiana noticed a figure that looked eerily familiar. The man stood at the stove at the far end of the kitchen. He stirred a big cooking spoon around a gumbo pot she instantly recognized. She couldn't make out the face, but she would have known those broad shoulders and muscled arms anywhere. "Daddy?" Tiana gasped. "That's right," the Shadow Man whispered. "It's your dear old daddy." "What is he? How?" This couldn't be real. It had to be a figment of her imagination. The figure turned, and Tiana let out a sharp breath. It was him. Joy burst inside her chest as she took off running, her arms stretched out wide in front of her. Everyone else in the kitchen disappeared. It was just she and her beloved father. It had been so long since she'd seen him, other than the countless dreams she'd had over the years. But just as she got near him, he vanished. "Daddy, no!" she shouted. Ah. The Shadow Man's loathsome voice ran out in her ears, once again knocking her out of her daze. Tiana glared at him as he stood before her with that sinister smirk on his face. He wasn't playing fair, toying with her emotions in such a cruel way. But then again, what did she expect from a no-good hustler like Facilier? "What do you say to my deal now, Tiana? You can work hard, scrimp and save. Maybe you'll get your restaurant in another 50 years, but there is nothing you can do that can bring your daddy back to life. You need me for that." The Shadow Man shook his head. "Tragic what happened to him. James was a good man. He didn't want to leave his family the way he did." "You keep his name out of your mouth," Tiana hissed. Facilier shrugged his bony shoulders as he casually searched for non-existent dirt underneath his fingernails. "Suit yourself. It's a shame that you would turn down the chance to see your daddy again. Makes me wonder if you ever loved him at all." "Don't you dare!" Tiana yelled. "He was my everything to me." "Then why won't you take me up on my offer?" Facilier said. "All I have to do is ask my friends on the other side for a little assistance, and you and your daddy will be making gumbo again. Think about your mama, and what it would mean to have her husband back." Tiana closed her eyes and conjured an image of her mama and daddy dancing in the middle of the kitchen of their small but comfortable home in the 9th Ward. The love beaming from them warmed her like rays from the bright summer sun. "It's impossible," she said. "He's gone." "What's impossible to you is child's play from my friends on the other side. They have powers you can never understand. The favor will carry a small price, of course, but that's to be expected. It will be hardly anything, if I'm being honest." Her eyes blinked open. "I don't believe you," Tiana said. My daddy has been gone for years. How could they just bring him back? Don't worry your pretty little head about the particulars. That's a problem for me and my friends on the other side to solve. Just trust me, Tiana. Trust him? Her eyes flared, his ridiculous statement bringing her back to earth. After all he'd put her and her friends through. You're the last person I'd ever trust. She held the amulet high above her head, preparing to smash it to the ground. But Facilier was quick. He stretched out his hand, releasing a blood-curdling scream.